I think it's very important to note that in 1959, we were involved in what was called the professional era of policing. Then Chief Davis was at the forefront of his profession at the time. The Raleigh Police Department was leading many police departments into this era of professionalism. We are very grateful to Chief Davis because later on, moving into the 60s, the badge that we all wear was designed by the chief. The colors and markings of our cars and many of the uniform upgrades were done during that professional era. Standards, policies, so very much was happening in policing around the country, particularly in that era. And Raleigh should take great pride in the fact that we had a chief and a police department that was on the forefront. Today, the Raleigh Police Department is very much a reflection of the men and women that were in the police department at 110 South McDowell Street when it opened in 1959. Certainly we're a larger department, we're a larger community, but the same feel, the same sense of professionalism certainly exists today. In fact, we owe so very much to the men and women that were in that building when I first entered.
I really found my calling in becoming a Raleigh police officer, and no matter where I am and what I'm doing from now on, I will always be a Raleigh police officer. In 1959, when the city was in the process of building that new building, I call it the new building. When the city was in the process of building that building, the police department training center had a room on the first floor. And I actually went to rookie school, police rookie school, in that room, in that building, in September of 1960. Then, of course, sometime shortly thereafter, all of the city government moved into that building. As I recall, the whole building was not used at that time. It was much too large for what we needed, and the fourth floor was unfinished and was there for expansion.
Well, it was like a little city in itself. Everything was there in one building. Field operations and traffic enforcement were all on the first level. The second floor contained the investigative division back in the 60s. There was even a district court in the first floor of the municipal building. We simply had to leave the squad room, walk around to the courtroom to hear our cases. I was hired in 1963 by the City Police Department and served for 30 years before retirement. Back in those days, we had a desk sergeant that issued warrants, as a magistrate does today. Dispatching of calls was done by two on-duty police officers who worked a telephone system behind the police sergeant's desk. And it was sort of, everybody knew everybody. The mayor, the city manager, we were all in one building, and it was just as if everybody was just cohesive and working together, and I got to see each other more readily than it is today, and the way things are set up here with the city.
We were all friends. We were a close-knit unit. When I first came on the department, our squad had about 13 or 14 men on it, and we were all real close friends. When we got off duty, we didn't go home right away. We'd hang around and shoot the breeze, and it was the camaraderie. First floor was the police department and city court. Pretlow Winborn was the city judge. You had to go to court regardless of what shift you were on. We'd get off the midnight shift and go to court. That first floor had the squad room, the radio room, which is a little bitty place, and the front desk, field operations and traffic, the chief's office. And one part of the hall had records and the ID, which was a little room, and we used to book people there because you brought them in before the desk sergeant booked them, fingerprinted them all in a little bitty room, and part of ID was in the basement of the building. It's obvious what a Raleigh police car is. I like the looks of them. I particularly like the paint job. That particular paint, I don't know if you know or not, is called Raleigh Police Blue, and it was developed by Plymouth just for us.
I was fortunate enough to come to the department when it wasn't a very large department, and as a result, as the city grew and the department grew, it opened up a lot of opportunities for a young police officer. For that time frame, it was state of the art. But then as the city grew and we grew, we actually outgrew that building. But regardless of where the police department calls home, they need to understand that they have a job to do, they have a citizenry to protect, and I just would ask that they do that to the very best of their ability.
We never realized that the department would grow as large, or the city. I was hired the Raleigh Police Department in May of 1966, and I retired in August of 1990. As years went by, the department grew, and the department expanded. I think now that we've outgrown that building, and so we're having to move in other directions.
Raleigh was a small but growing city, vibrant, of course, because it's the capital. The city was growing, so was the police department, and we were working out of the 110 building. We didn't have any other substations or anything of that nature. We were just working primarily out of that building. The police department had more of a familiar relationship where you knew everyone. You worked very closely with most of the guys and ladies in the department, and also city employees as well, because it wasn't that many people that were involved with the city at that time, very small. When I came on in '72, we were still having some of the racial tensions around that was prominent. We didn't have as many minorities and females on the police department when I actually got on the department. It was the era in which leadership felt a need to try and improve those statistics or improve the representation of officers on the police department so that the officers would reflect what the community reflects. And when we started moving people and different sections outside of the department, then and only then did we have some additional space to work with headquarters personnel and house those specialty units. That building has served us well, and obviously we've outgrown it many times over the past few years.
Well, for me to walk in the building for the first time in 1981 and then to be back in 2010 when the building was closing was a real special time for me. I wandered up to the 4th floor of the investigative division and just walked through the building as it was being emptied and was really struck by the history. I was most impressed by the people that worked in the building. When I was on the 4th floor, I thought of all the cases that those incredible detectives had worked over the years. And the citizens of our community are indeed fortunate to have the talented men and women in this police department. We had a ceremony lowering the flag for the very last time at 110 South McDowell Street. It was a special time for all of us because we took a moment to think back on all the men and women that have been in that building. And that flag is now going to be a piece of our history. And we want everyone to know how proud we were of all the people that worked in that building and all the citizens that we served. You know, I couldn't help but think back to 1981 when I had moved in. And to think that today I was the chief that had the good fortune and the privilege and the honor to close the building. We're moving boldly into the future, but the history, the past, but most importantly, the men and women that serve this police department will always be remembered into our future.